What is up, everybody? Welcome to the VFR CBR 800 V4 bike build, where we are taking this 2004 Honda VFR 800, converting it into a one-of-a-kind CBR 800 V4, the only one in the world. Now, if you want to own this bike when it's done, simply support the build series by going over to patreon.com/motopilot. For as little as $1 per video, you can qualify to own this bike when it's finished. And the more you support the build series over at Patreon, the higher your odds of winning the bike. Let's see what we're getting into today. All right, step number one is we're gonna get the forks on the bike, but before we do that, I'm gonna paint the lowers here. These forks were bought used off eBay. They're off a Kawasaki ZX-10R. You can't put CBR forks on this bike because they're too short. These ones are the right length. So we're gonna paint these. I got this very special Eastwood paint and primer. I'm not gonna use regular Krylon, that stuff's garbage. This paint costs like 5 times more than that garbage paint. High quality primer and paint, like a satin black. I've already sanded them with some light sandpaper. I've got plugs in, little rubber plugs here where the threads are. And I've wiped it down with some lacquer thinner, so we're gonna paint those. Then over here, we got a nice set of driven clip-ons. These things are adjustable. You can slide this tube in and out. Obviously, you can adjust these up and down, like most of them. Really nice machine billet aluminum clamp here. Over here, we got G2 ergonomics throttle tube. This thing's billet aluminum. It's awesome. G2 makes a lot of different styles. This one here is the quick turn, so you don't have to turn the throttle as far to get the full gas. They've got one that'll calm down the jerkiness in your bike. And then they got your, your standard stock setting. They call these the cams here. This one here's got a set cam, but you can buy these also with cams that you can replace. And over here we got a set of Pro Grip handle grips. We'll get those on. First step is let's get the forks painted so we can get those on the bike. All right, guys. So here we are in the backyard. I always paint away from cars and everything because of overspray. Now it's a cool day out here today. It's wintertime in California. So what I did was I preheated this metal with a heat gun. You can use a blow dryer if you want, just to get the metal so it's not cold. It's not hot, it's just not cold. Eastwood recommends painting in 70 degrees to 90 degrees. So the metal is not cold. It'll allow the primer and the paint to stick better. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give it 2 light coats of primer, which is black, and then we're gonna paint it. Make sure you get full coverage everywhere, every angle, every nook, every cranny. Now when I'm done painting this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it back in the garage so it doesn't, so it gets warm. I actually have a heater in my garage. So I'll let that cure in the garage. They say let it cure for an hour between coats. That seems awfully long, but we'll get her done. Look how much better that looks already. All right, guys, so we got 2 coats of primer on here. We're getting ready to throw on the satin finish black. Start pouring rain, and luckily I had these indoors, but my camera was still in the backyard in the rain. Luckily it's still working. And so I'm in the front yard now, spraying underneath the eaves of the house, so we should be okay. Got a couple vehicles in the driveway, but they should be fine because they're all wet. And it's just, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna give it 4 light coats. Okay, so here we are after 3 coats. They recommend only 2. I went ahead and did 3. I was gonna do 4, but now it's still really glossy because it's still wet. It's a satin finish, so it'll dull out as it dries. We're gonna go ahead and put the forks on now and let this dry for a few days. We're not gonna be working on the front wheel anyways in this video. So let's go ahead and get the forks on the bike. So now that the forks are on, I got about 1 5/8 rise here so I can get my risers on. So these are all the way down, touching the triple clamp. That's as far down as they can go. You can see there's a little bit of a gap up here. I'm gonna bring it up just a little bit so it's not rubbing on the clamp. Don't want to ruin the finish. And just get them kind of close to position. You can always reposition them once you get, seated on your bike and get everything in place. Make sure these are really loose before you put this on. So when you get them, they're tight when they're new. Loosen them way up and then slide this on as far down as you can. Then I bring it up just a little bit. And then I'm just going to snug everything down. I don't want it to be tight just yet because I don't know what the final position will be. And then we'll just get both sides on. So before we put the right handlebar on, we're going to change out the throttle tube here because it's going to slide onto the handlebar and then go into place. And you can see here's a good reason why I wanted to replace this tube. It's all broken and ugly. And I wanted the performance of the short throttle here. I like a really short throttle. So we're simply going to take out the two Phillips screws here and install the new throttle tube. Before you take the cables out of place, make sure you get a good look in there and see how everything's positioned so you get it back the same way it was. Okay, so what I was able to do is come over here to the left side of the bike. Just underneath the airbox here is this, there's the throttle cables here. This is the upper adjuster. I just loosened up this nut right here and popped this out of this bracket right here. So now I have all this extra free play. So let's go back to the throttle tube. Okay, I didn't get quite enough free play loosening up that one part of the adjuster on the other side. There's two little screws that hold the bracket on for those two cables. I just took them out. They're Allen heads. Now I've got plenty of free play here to get the throttle tube out of the cables. So just kind of look at what we got here. Just gonna pop the cables out. And then put the new ones in. These are always tricky, but it's a little tight. There we go, there we go. Just didn't have it lined up correctly. So now that we got the cables in there correctly, just put the housing. Let's go ahead and, I'm gonna go to the other side, take up the slack over there, and then this will just kind of pop into place because right now it's just kind of, you want to take out the slack first. So I'll go do that. Okay, before we can put the throttle on, the housing of the throttle has a little metal stud that goes into a hole in the handlebars. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole in the handlebar to allow for that stud. So I measured it off. Comes in 5.312 inches from the end of the bar. So that's a 1/16 of an inch over 5 1/4. I don't know if I can see that. And I'm going to drill it on the bottom of the handlebar because that's where the post is. Then we'll hit it with a center punch and drill it out. I haven't figured out what size drill yet. Let's try to get this hole marked here first. Oh my God. Okay. Measure twice. Yep, dead on. Okay, anytime I drill a hole, I always start with a small hole first. I mean, this bit is pretty stinking small. Even when the final hole I'm drilling isn't much bigger than this. It just really helps things along. Okay, now I'm coming back with the final size, 7/32. Looks to be about right. See how easy that drills? Because you have a pilot hole, just goes right through it. Here we go. Let's check it out. Slide this in here. Hole is on the bottom where it should be. There we go. Dropped right in. Let's put this together. Drop in your 2 screws. Voila. All right, so now that we got the trip clamps on, the forks on, and the clip-ons, let's just kind of check our freedom here, make sure there's nothing binding. Got good clearances, cables are clearing, everything looks good, it's moving freely, sweet. Let's put on the clutch. Okay, so on the clutch side, there's also a pin that goes into the handlebar. So I've already drilled the pilot hole. Now I'm gonna drill the main size hole. Done there. So now we just insert the bar back into the clamp, like so. Line it up about the same position as the other one. Just got 2 Allen bolts. Just snugging everything down, not going too tight. And the first thing to go on will be the clutch lever. Actually, let's put this on first. Where are the screws? So we just put the housing on here. Here's the housing with the pin. Let's line the pin up with the hole. Good to go. Got your 2 screws that come in from the bottom. Okay, now we got our hydraulic clutch assembly. Got a new lever going on. I'll show you that in a minute. This goes between the clamp and the controller here. Also, you'll always notice these have an up on them. So you want to have that arrow facing upward. It actually says up on this one. Eight millimeter socket. There we go. Okay, that's all mounted in position. Now let's take a look at swapping out this lever assembly. So what we have here is a pair of PSR levers, front brake and clutch. This is the clutch. Let's take a look at it. Get yourself a little sticker here. Here's the clutch lever. I personally like the shorty levers. I like to just use 2 fingers when I ride. So I've always used those. You can see it's got clickers on both sides to adjust the lever in and out. Very nice. Nice billet aluminum. Let's mount it up, make sure it fits. We'll start by taking out the pivot bolt here. 10 millimeter nut on the bottom, flat head on the top. Okay, it just slides right out, and then you have a little, I don't know what you'd call this right here. This is the piece that goes on the plunger right here, so you don't want to lose that. That'll go in the new one. We want to clean it up first. Let's hit it with a little WD-40. Yeah, much better. Clean all inside here, get all the sticky dirt out of here that makes things bind up. See, look at how much dirt's in there. Clean this up. Clean this plunger off here. Clean off the pivot bolt. It was kind of sticky coming out. Okay, so we're just going to insert this back in here. Fits perfectly. And then it's got a hole in it. Make sure that hole goes over that shaft. Oop. Okay, so far so good. Everything's lining up. What you'll find sometimes when you go to install these into this bracket here is they are machined too wide or something, and you're like, oh great. And just snug that bolt right there. Grab our nut for the bottom. Let's clean that nut a little bit. It looks pretty bad. I always keep these little metal brushes around. You can get these things at Harbor Freight or AutoZone. They come in real handy. Much better. And just hold the top as you tighten the bottom. And just snug it. Doesn't have to be super tight. Perfect. See, here's the adjuster here for little hands, big hands. I keep mine on the big hand setting. Let's go ahead and strip the masking tape off these forks, see how they look. Ooh, I like that black coating. Maybe doing covering these up in black. I don't know, the gold looks pretty good. I might cover them in some sort of a black sticker. But you don't really see them much once the fairings are on. Pretty nice, pretty nice. Okay, that's how they look, finished form. Now, I don't know if you can see this or not, but you can see this fork over here appears to be leaking a little bit. I didn't change the seals on these. I wasn't sure if they leaked or not. My normal drill is to change the fork seals automatically, but everything was gone so long, I just wanted to get them on the bike. So we'll pull the forks back off in a future video and get some new fork seals in there, fresh oil, get those taken care of. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do for today is put on the left side handle grip. You can always tell the left grip from the right, the throttle grip. The left grip is always thicker and firmer than the throttle grip, which is thinner. So my trick is I just take some of the wife's hairspray, spray it inside the grip really good. Not real good, but just enough to wet it. Just slide it on real quick. Okay, and then you let that sit overnight. Usually firms up really good. You can also safety wire it. There's a groove here and a groove here. So we'll just let that be for now. Make sure you get it on there nice and straight. And there you go. You know what, let's go ahead and put the throttle grip on too. Look at that, snappy. Always after you put a throttle together, always check it to make sure it still functions properly. Spray the inside of this bad boy. Just kind of rotate it as you put it on. That takes some muscle. You don't want to push it on too far. You don't want to rubbing against this here. That'll make it bind. Always check it, make sure it turns okay. Good to go. Look at that. Okay, so here's how the whole front end looks being fully assembled. I screwed up and didn't get this below the top triple clamp, so I gotta take this off. I'll just lift this up real quick when I take the forks off to do the seals, put this underneath there, but that gives you the idea. You got your nice billet triple clamp, this cool billet nut. Everything looks pretty sweet up here. I love fine machine billet. All right, guys, that does it for this build episode. I really wanted to come back to you next week with another episode, getting the front wheel on. After waiting 2 extra weeks to get the wheel from powder coating, it's got the wrong finish. It's supposed to be more of a matte finish. This is kind of a semi-gloss, and that was actually my fault, and I'm really bummed about it. So I'm gonna get this back to the powder coaters on Monday. Hopefully they can turn it around quick. Normally they don't. But I'm really stoked with the front end. I love the black, all blacked out. And the gold, the triple clamps, everything blacked out. It looks really nice. So don't forget, if you want the bike, go over to the Patreon, support the build series. It really helps me keep these videos going. And I will see you guys in the next episode.